Wizards of the Coast have done a little naughty. They've told perhaps a non-purposeful lie, but they've lied nonetheless. They gave us the pricing for how the pre-constructed decks on Arena would be, as they released today, I think it was, and they've come out and, well, Saffron Olive noticed something interesting. His tweet is what brought it to my attention. He said there's something weird going on. The pricing that they mentioned on the website, as shown here, 5,310 gems, absolutely does not line up with the shop price. The Dino one, for example, is 9,190 gems. If you're wondering what this cross-out price is in this bit there below, they have done the right thing in allowing you to buy the deck at a discounted price when you already have cards that are inside it. So, for example, that's just what I can get it for because I owned too many cards on Arena and I played too much Magic on both Arena and Modo and in paper. Anyway, the point is, Wizards of the Coast probably using incorrect pricing on their website. I wasn't really going to comment on these decks whatsoever, even though I think they're quite expensive, but this tipped me over the edge. I want to talk about how that's a bit of a joke, that they got that wrong. I want to talk about the obfuscation of how much they cost through the use of a gem system and basically mobile game economy stuff. I've talked about this on the channel before, but it's been a while and I've avoided it. Let's talk about it again. And lastly, let's talk about how that's too expensive anyway. Just full fucking stop. And if you want to pick up a single or sealed product for the real physical game of Magic the Gathering that is not going to be mispriced according to Wizards of the Coast, you can do so via the link in the description below to coolstuffinc.com. Use the little code KENOBI at checkout to get 5% off your order and it helps to support the show. Right, let's get it out of the way. The potential that this was just a outright mistake. Shout out to Twitter user MTGScribe who pointed this out in response to Saffron Olive's tweet. There was a talk from a developer that there was a sale price and a normal price. Reading the screenshot provided by MTGScribe, it says, wotc Dave says, for the store decks, the decks each have a base price and a sale price. For example, the standard Toxic deck has a base price of 16,165 gems and a sale price of 11,280 gems. The sale price was listed in the web article.
The fuck does that mean?
Okay, so it's probably just a mistake. I am going to assume, I never try to assume malice, and I also just assume things are a clusterfuck with any big business. We've all worked in big businesses and we know how hard it can be to get things right. And honestly, a mistake like this is excusable for the most part. People putting up the wrong number on a website isn't like the pearl clutching incident that some people might want to make it out to be or think I'm going to make it out to be. However, I do think it's worse and exaggerated when we have this situation where we're talking about abstract gem numbers. You see, when the prices came out, there was a Reddit thread where people discussed how much those decks were via the price on the website and what that related to in terms of gems to real world money, and then how much real world money you're paying per rare, and so on and so on. People did the work. Other YouTubers made videos about whether they were worth the money that Wizards had said they were going to be on the website. And the thing is, when people are then watching those videos or reading the Reddit threads or checking out the Twitter stuff and seeing that this deck is $50 and this many rares, that makes the rares worth X amount, and so on and so on and so on. When it comes to purchase day, if you got gems in your account, you log in and you don't notice that it's a bumped price by a significant margin actually. So most people will notice. I don't think there's a moral panic about this, but some people would have clicked and bought based upon the already done research by Reddit and Twitter and content creators like myself and Saffron Olive and Jim Davis, who I think did a video on it, and so on and so on and so on. The thing is, no one needs to do those calculations at the very least. Maybe some commentary on whether it's worth it, but the calculations, if you put things up at an upfront price. The reason things are priced in gems on the Arena client is, well, there's several reasons, but they all factor into one major reason. It's to make it confusing and more difficult to figure out how much money you're spending on a digital client. This is a play-by-play taken from the monetization of digital and mobile games. Instead of giving you the fact that you're buying a digital item with no resale value for £5 English or $5 American or wherever you live, there are other places on this planet I do appreciate and understand. But instead of doing that, where you're like, actually, you know what? Fuck that. I don't want to spend £5 on a digital object I'll never see. Instead, you're buying it with gems. You've already parted with your money to buy the cash. It gives you a layer of abstraction that allows you to feel less bad about spending money on things you'll never get money back out of. A quick caveat there. It sounds like I'm being very dismissive about buying digital stuff. I'm not. I buy digital cards on Arena all the time as part of the content for this channel when I make Brawl videos and similar and Gladiator. I do that as part of my job, but even before I was making full-time content, I was still buying digital cards online, albeit fewer, should I say, because I always felt guilty. The point is, I also spend a little bit of money on League of Legends here and there. I'll buy a skin, I'll buy digital video games I can't trade in, so on and so on and so on. I'm not saying it's bad to buy digital items. It's kind of part of the landscape of trying to play and enjoy yourself in the world in which we live now. What I am saying is that myself and others included will feel weird about spending a lot of money on digital shit that we can't trade in, especially when you compare a digital client like Arena to, say, Magic the Gathering Online, where you can cash in for tickets and sell out to the secondary market there. Or physical real-world Magic, where one of the big draws of Magic is that you can sell your collection at some point, so you can recuperate some of the cost, or it's not a complete sunk cost. So, how do they get around that? Well, they give you the gem system. For those of you that haven't seen it in a while, need a recap or just don't engage with Arena, 20,000 gems is 110 euros and 49 cents. I think it's actually cheaper to buy in America, but I'm not going to bother looking at that because it pisses me off that we get taxed more. 9,200 gems is 55 euros and 49 cents. So they fuck the price up, and it fucks up the prep, and it fucks up the conversation around it, and that's not good. And I think they should perhaps apologize for that. Do you know what the real apology would be? The real good apology? It's just to drop the price of the decks on your digital client to the prices you'd already advertised, that people may have made their purchasing decisions or information used to decide whether they're buying it or not. Because you can do that, because there's no, you're losing out on profit margin to an extent, but you're actually getting the goodwill of your customer base, which is a thing you should do, Wizards, because if I'm honest, Arena burns a lot of it. But before turning on the camera, instead of like just looking at it and seeing how much the decks would cost if I were to buy them, I actually had to go and figure out how many pennies it was per gem, and then use that calculation to figure out how much the decks were in real world money, and then I could do my calculation on how many rares are in it and what each of the rares cost. It is dumb. It is insane that we have to have this layers and layers of obfuscation to make it difficult to figure out whether it's value for money or not. Because it just leads to either, with me, it leads me to not want to buy things. But for the majority, and that's why this exists, it makes them just say, fuck it, I don't really know, who cares, I can afford it. And that's what they want, right? They want you not to realize how much you're spending, and also to say, fuck it, I don't really understand what's going on, I can afford it. Okay, so that brings us to the next point. So the standard Dinosaurs deck that was advertised at like 5,000 gems is actually 9,190 gems, which is just shy of 9,200 gems, which is 55 euros and 49 cents. Why is it 20 gems short of the 55.49 euros? Well, look, the reason is, and you all know this, is that if you drop below a flat price, like 99 cents instead of a whole dollar, you seem a little bit cheaper. But the real reason is that when you buy a denomination of cash or gems or whatever the currency is in your video game, and you get left with a little bit of it, it just sits in your account, nagging you. I currently have 95 gems just sat on my account that I can't spend on anything. And thus it plants a seed. It makes a little scratch that you might need to itch. Why don't I just top it up and spend it? It's wasted otherwise. I'm losing value. I'm just leaving gems on the table. I'm leaving digital currency on a table that doesn't exist in the abstract. But to be honest, that's as old as time itself, right? Leaving some currency on your system. We can't get annoyed with them at it, but I'm just saying it's the compounding effects of them lying inadvertently or not onto these things does bug me. 55 euros and 49 cents for a foundation level, as they call it, a foundation deck, standard Dinosaurs. Look, I'm not going to pretend I've played any standard recently, but honestly, I can't imagine this deck is very good. There are other creators out there that might be able to talk to whether the fact that you could actually grind some part of the ladder with this. But I don't think paying 55 euros for a deck that you might be able to grind some of the ladder with is acceptable. Keep in mind the challenger decks for standard that are now rotated out, or parts of them are rotated out, retail at 24.99 English pounds. That's for decks that come with physical cards that you get to own and resale at some point. Why does this card cost twice the amount of a challenger deck in paper? That is insane to me. To reiterate, I was never going to come up on these prices. I saw them, thought they were too much before the lie got revealed, and now I'm like, they're definitely too much and I want to cover it. But wait, there's more. There's a lot of brawl decks. I'm not going to go into them. There's probably a whole load of information there, but I just don't want to spend too much time digging around the Arena economy because it pisses me off too much. But let's just focus, before we end the video, on the standard champion deck. Oh, right, that's right. This one's got champion written on it, not foundation, but champion. The toxic deck comes in at 89 euros and 30 cents. Whilst Dino deck only had 18 rares, the toxic deck has 32 rares, which means it's 2 euros and 78 cents per rare in the deck. Is toxic any good? Again, I can't say from personal experience, but what I understand it from talking to people is it's a tier 2.5 deck at best. Importantly, the toxic deck has 0 cards from Bloomburrow in it, so you're not getting anything new or fresh. You are getting cards that are currently still in standard, of course, but are not part of the latest set. But it does have a mana base that I assume will be playable in other blue-white decks. For example, there are 4 copies of Seachrome Coast, 4 copies of Arctic Waste, 2 Razor Verge Thicket. Like, there are some lands in here that are desirable and usable in other archetypes. I think that's a positive. But is it a 90 euro positive? Is it the price of nearly all 4 standard challenger decks that were last released? You could buy all 4 of them for £100 for physical standard deck. I think the answer to that is really fucking obvious. It's a no, right? These decks are insanely expensive. Like, $90 for a pre-constructed like tier 2 if we're like what's the word I'm looking for? It's on the tip of my tongue. If we're generous. Oh god, I couldn't think of the word. I'm getting old. But if we're generous, $90 for a tier 2 standard deck in a digital realm where we can't sell the cards and we can't dust the cards or exchange them in any way, that is nonsense. This price is disgusting and it's almost a parody. Like if you said to me they're doing pre-con decks on Arena, the obvious joke would go to when you ask how much you reckon they'll sell them for, is say some silly number, $100. We're not far off. I think it works out a little bit cheaper if you are buying into like 20,000 gems at a time because you get a discount the more gems you buy. So it might be closer to 80 euros if we're buying the full whack, like a 20,000 gems for 110 euros, then you're getting a little bit cheaper because you're buying in a full whack. But at that point, you then got 4,000 gems stuck on your account, so you can buy, I don't know, a fucking Zada Hedron Grinder Brawl deck. I think pre-con decks on Arena have a space and a place, and I think it's a good thing for them to go towards. I think selling them at this price is obnoxious and dumb, and I just wanted to point that out. And I wasn't going to. I was going to leave it. I was going to do some Dual Commander stuff today and do other things today. That's going to be pushed off to next week now for release on the channel. But instead, I found out that they'd fucked the announcement of it, made people think it was a better value than it is, and then pushed it out the door at a much more expensive price, which I already thought was expensive in the first point. I already thought it was too expensive when we had the lied about price, the sale price. I guess the final point I'll end this on is that I guess maybe the prices are pushed to the extreme so that they can, as they like sub them down a little bit to make it cheaper for you to buy when you already own a load of the cards, it feels like a better value proposition. For example, I can get this deck for 1,750 gems because the cards are already on my account, which means I'm paying just a little over 11, 12 euros if I buy the 1,600 gem pack, right? I'm paying about 12, 13 pounds for the privilege of unlocking this deck on my client. And I think if that was the all-out price at the entire thing, I'd think that might be erring on reasonable. I genuinely think that's how cheap pre-con decks on a digital client should be. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.